G'day, Pastor Blake here. Thanks so much for watching this message today. I pray that this sermon and resource would help grow you in your relationship with Jesus, also in conjunction with a local church. If you have any questions about our church, you can head to our website, devonportcoc.com.au. Again, thanks for watching this message today, and I do hope that it blesses you in your love and devotion towards Jesus Christ. Well, today on Father's Day, we're actually beginning a whole brand new series called The Things That I Want My Kids to Remember Forever. The things that I want my kids to remember forever. If you're a parent here today, you would have already come to the conclusion that your kids are not your own. They are yours, obviously, in terms of DNA, but the truth is that they are a gift from God. They're a gift from God, and I'm learning that they're a gift from God, and you raise them to release them. And I think my mother always said to me, your kids grow up so quick. And it's so true. I hear my mother's voice in my head, and you won't, until you have kids of your own, Blake, you'll never realise just how quickly they grow up. And looking back at my 4 kids, she was right. And I can't tell you how quick they do. Like, it only seems like yesterday that the photos are coming up on my Facebook history about my kids, and now they're starting to find their place in the world. And my eldest is loving life in Melbourne at University of Melbourne, and I'm praying that he'll ring me today. And I really am. I think one of the jobs of parenting is to make sure you give your kids the best platform possible to flourish in life. That you want to set them up to flourish and to succeed in life. You want to make sure that you prepare them for the real world, and that they are resilient enough to flourish. Building resilience in kids, I think, is paramount, so they can survive what the world will inevitably throw at them. I can't emphasize the issue of building resilience in children enough, and I know that Alison and I have always, whether it's been to push them into be a little bit risky, or, you can climb that tree, or you can do that. Like, we've always done that because we want to build resilience in our lives. Building resilience in children so they can grow up to become resilient teenagers, so that they can grow up to become resilient young adults, and therefore who can grow up to become resilient adults. Because just being at a particular age does not mean that you're resilient. And I was thinking about what would be some general life principles that I'd want my kids to remember forever. What would they be? Principles that obviously have a biblical worldview to begin with. They have a biblical worldview, yet also helps build resilience in their lives. This first principle I want to talk about today on Father's Day is something that's been uttered from the mouth of every child that I think's ever been on the planet. It's what they say to parents when someone cheats in a game, or gets a bigger slice of pizza, or has to take the rubbish out because there's no other siblings home. What is it? That's not fair. That's not fair. Has any parents heard that before? Of course you have. That's not fair. The first thing that I want my kids to remember forever is that life is not fair. Life is not fair. But before I start, I just want to qualify, just a qualifier here. Sometimes the reasons why people's lives, particularly younger people's lives, or, well, could be any age really, but I just want to qualify this. The reason why I counsel so many people when they come to my office or when they want to chat with me is because it's not because life is not fair. It's because they've just made dumb decisions. I just want to say this as pastorally and peacefully as I can this morning. Stop making dumb decisions. If we keep making poor decisions, whether that's to do with money, relationships, sex, or anything else, we just keep going deeper into the weeds. Have you found that? With any decision we make. But do you realise that if you make a good, healthy decision today, that it'll bless you tomorrow's? You could just make one good decision today and it will bless you tomorrow. Oh, it really will. Like example, a simple one. If you don't spend all your pay that you get from work or Centrelink or whatever it is, and you save some of that, how many of us know that that's going to bless you tomorrow? But how many of us I used to live like this, spend all the money I had from my pay. But that's going to help me tomorrow. Because God doesn't want us living paycheck to paycheck or whatever it is. So if you just save a little bit, that's going to bless you tomorrow. Now I'm talking to people who all know this, right? It's maybe just the younger people who need to hear this. Maybe. But if you make a good decision, it will bless you tomorrow. Sometimes it's not about life is not fair, but because you made a dumb decision. So make a good decision today so it'll bless you tomorrow's. So let me talk about that life is not fair. As sad as that may be to some of us here today, it's still true. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Kind and God-honouring people suffer terribly. Bad and evil people prosper. It's a truth as old as Scripture itself, and the prophet Jeremiah wrestled with the very same thing. This is what the prophet Jeremiah said. He said, "Righteous are you, O Lord, when I plead with you. Yet let me talk with you about your judgments. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why are those happy who deal so treacherously?" That's a fair question. Why does God allow Putin to... The guy's a nutter. He's a madman. I could keep going. Why does God allow that? Why does this happen? Like, in life, if a child doesn't get the birthday gift that they'd requested, or he or she may cross their arms and stick out their lower lip and say, that's not fair. When someone else in a job gets promoted above somebody, the unpromoted may stomp and lament. It's not fair. When the doctor says it's not good news, one may whisper under their breath and mutter, it really isn't fair. We don't get what we want. Sometimes someone else gets it. We don't like our circumstances. We feel left out and overlooked sometimes and say that life is not fair. But you know what? I've been thinking that I want my kids to understand that sometimes school teachers will misunderstand circumstances and won't always make the fairest choice. Life's not fair. I want my kids to know that one day their future boss or supervisor may overlook them for a promotion because they favour somebody else. Suck it up. Life is not fair. Or you don't get picked on a sporting team when you should have. Is it right? No, but life's not fair. Or a work colleague is continually duplicitous and gossips behind your back and takes all the credit for the work that you did. I'm not saying you should remain in a workplace where that happens, or I'm not also saying here that you should lay down and be a doormat. But I am saying to you that you will always find these people in workplaces. They're everywhere you go. They're everywhere. You can't avoid them. They're there. So what are you going to do? Quit every job? No. It's not fair. Yeah. Like think about it. Whoever told you that life was fair? What seems fair to one person may seem totally unfair to another. But I reckon one of the rites of passage into adulthood is the realisation that life is not always fair. And yet people still get offended by life's unfairness for reasons that we do not understand. Bad things do happen to good people all the time. And as I said, a thing which is more inexplicable is sometimes good things happen to bad people. And when we say that life is not fair, are we what we're really saying is that God, you're not fair. God isn't fair. Do you know that Job thought God wasn't fair? In fact, you know the story. Job is a righteous man. He's a blessed man. He's a very wealthy man. And God allows Satan to test him because Satan said to God, he only follows you because he's blessed. He only follows you, God, because all his ducks always line up in a row. But I'll tell you what, you take away some of that stuff and you watch him run to the hills. Because it's a bit like, well, I'll follow God when everything's rosy in my life, but when everything turns pear-shaped, I'm out of there. And God says, yeah, go for it. But I'm going to put limits on it. Gee, tell you what, Job loses all of his family. His children are killed when the roof of the flipping house falls in on him. I mean, he loses his wife, all of his possessions and his livestock and his health. He gets all these sores on his body. Job suffers more than is imaginable, and not once does God explain why. Not once does God explain why. For reasons beyond my pay grade, I don't know why God never defends himself or answers the question why. Yet after all of Job's complaining and lamenting that goes on for 37 chapters, Job asking God questions. In chapter 38, God asked Job some questions. I'll just read some of it. Brace yourself like a man. I tell you what, when God says brace yourself like a man, I tell you that's you better brace yourself. Brace yourself like a man. I will question you now, and you shall answer me. Fill me in, please. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Please tell me. Oh, that's right. Yeah, right. Yeah. Tell me if you understand. Like who marked off its dimensions? Like surely, Job, you know. Who stretched the measuring line across it? On what were its footing set? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in its thick darkness. When I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place. When I said, this far you may come and no further. Here is where your proud waves halt. Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place? No, I have not. What is God saying there? Well, I think God, and this is my perspective, I will not question God's sovereignty. And I will not question the way he runs the universe. Or tell him how I would. Think about the parable of the workers of the vineyard for a second. You want to talk about fairness. So think about the parable of the workers in the vineyard. where we might have told the workers that those who worked the longest would make the most money, and those who came late would be paid accordingly. Because what in the parable, the ones who turned up late, they were paid the same, right? Now, if they were paid, the longest workers were paid more, and the ones who didn't work for as long were paid what they were owed, that's fair, right? That's fair. But certainly wouldn't be an accurate picture of redemption, would it? Next time that we start wondering and questioning, why is it that children suffer? Why do the evil prosper? Why do Bali bombers get off on early parole? Remember the point that I don't think this is not something to rest in. I don't think this is something to understand and understand, yes, logically. No, I just think that this is something just to accept. That you do not run the universe, that God runs the universe. We sometimes, we expect that God will work to our, what we want and our own expectations. But I'll not question God's sovereignty. Remember the point, it's not something to rest in or understand, but I just think it's something to accept. I want my kids to remember that life is not fair, so it doesn't eat their lunch later on in life. Life is not fair. And no one said it would be. The second point about this is that God does not have to work to our expectations. We live and we run into real problems in life when we try to impose our definitions of fairness onto God. When God's actions or lack of actions do not meet our expectations. And we expect God to do something in a certain way for us. And if he does not, we think that God has failed us. So our expectations, they cover a variety of situations, don't they, and examples. From God helping us get a certain job. God, I really want this job. And then it falls through. Or God healing us of a debilitating illness or sickness, and it doesn't happen. Or we want it to happen a particular way. To our expectations that the Christian life will be free of hardship. And sometimes we look around and we at least at times think to ourselves, God, this is not fair. I'm sure you can think of times in your own life. Can I share something personal with you? I am anyway. Last November, we had the John Mellor Healing Ministries here. And we had some healing meetings and we had a healing seminar. Look, it was an incredible weekend. It was an incredible weekend, and we saw the power of God move in some incredible ways over people. We really did. And people were touched from God. I saw God work in ways that I haven't seen in my time here. On the Saturday afternoon, there was a healing seminar, and I was prayed for. And in particular, I was prayed for. I have arthritis in my left hip, and don't know where it came from. Well, I do Genesis chapter 3. Thank you very much, but I don't know where it came from. Maybe doing the milk run for many, many years for younger people. Milk used to be delivered to people's homes. And playing on tennis courts, hard concrete tennis courts. They may be that, but they don't really know. They said it could have been a defect in utero that's taken 48 years to come to fruition. But they can't explain it at all. Like this hip, 100%, this one, dodgy. And so I was prayed for by John at this Saturday seminar, and I experienced the power of God go through my body in a significant way. And in fact, I've been a Christian for so many years, and I'd never have been slain in the Spirit, ever. And I did carpet time that day, multiple times. The power of God went through my body. I cannot deny it. You can't deny what you experienced. And went through my body, and some of you are here. And I ran around this place like nothing. I jumped up on the stage. I crouched down like I'd never done before. And for 3 weeks, I walked in 3 weeks. I experienced healing. But I'd like to be able to say that I was fully healed today. But the truth is I haven't been. It wasn't a lasting healing. Now, I've got to tell you that I thought when we had John here, it was a wonderful time. What I'm trying to say is, I'm not asking why. And I certainly, I wish that it was lasting. I wish that I didn't have to probably go under the knife in the foreseeable future. Because it saved me a lot of money with HCF. But I want you to know, church, I just want to put myself out there and say that I've never asked God really why, and I'm not angry about it. I don't think I've ever really questioned him about it. I just have simply accepted it. And I think one of the reasons why is because my theology of healing is sound. What I mean is that I fully believe that God still heals today. I don't understand anyone who doesn't believe that. I fully understand and believe to my bootstraps that God heals today. I prayed for people to get healed in India, and people got healed. I still believe that with all my heart. I've seen it. But I also understand that not everyone gets healed on this side. But I also understand that every Christian gets healed in eternity. And do you know what was at the back of this, really? God owes me nothing. God owes me nothing. And I think that's what's at the back of Job. God owes him nothing. And I'm here to tell you today, it might be hard to hear, but God owes you nothing. He is God, and you are not. He has given you Jesus. And if that's all he's given you, that's enough. He's given you a whole lot more, right? But if Jesus and his grace and the opportunity to be forgiven and to be in a relationship with the Father was all that he gave me, I'm here to tell you it's enough for me. God owes me nothing, and he owes you nothing. Because he is God, and I am not. But I'm here to wrap this sermon up today with this. Life is not always fair, but God is always faithful. And it's hard to go past the story of Joseph to illustrate this point. I love how Joseph handles himself when life was unfair to him. Talk about life being unfair to him. I mean, Joseph, his father was a bit silly, but playing favourites. But, the thing is, right, he got the coloured coat and he walked, he thought he was hot stuff as, he did. It's in the text there. He was young and he was silly. Yeah, but he gets thrown into the pit because of the jealousy of his brothers. Then they sold him into slavery. Joseph is abused. He's sold into slavery into Egypt, and he ends up working in Potiphar's house. Is falsely accused of, trying to rape the boss's wife. Is thrown into prison for being an innocent man. And you would expect to be written into this story, Joseph screaming at the top of his lungs, "It's not fair." Why, God, oh why? You would expect at very least from Joseph a pity party about his unfair life circumstances. At least maybe a Facebook post so that people can comfort him and say, yes, you are a victim. I'm sorry that this has happened to you. Not Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph and he prospered. And he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. And when his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did. Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. And Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. And from the time he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. And the blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. And so he left in Joseph's care everything he had. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. It's a good wicket. Joseph succeeded because God was with him. And I'm sure he faithfully carried out all of the duties assigned to him, but his success is not really attributed to his hard work or his ingenuity. His success is attributed to the presence of God himself throughout his whole life. Joseph never had a chip on his shoulder. You would think that he'd have a chip on his shoulder. Oh, woe is me, look at my life. I've got a chip on my... He never had that. He never had a chip on his shoulder because life was unfair. He knew life was unfair and unjust. He had a testimony about that, but he knew that God is faithful. What does verse 2 say there? But the Lord was what? With Joseph. And faith in Christ is the only thing that I think will help you do better than your best, even when life is unfair. I want my kids to do better than better than best when life is unfair. You see, when we have been unfairly treated, we're tempted to give up or to get by, and we would if we're unfairly treated at work, we would do the least just to get by. We're certainly not encouraged to give life our best effort when we have been wrongly treated. But when our trust is in the Lord, just like Joseph, then we can serve people well wherever we are and however we're treated. The Lord was with Joseph in the pit. The Lord was with Joseph in slavery, in Potiphar's house, in prison, and when he was in charge of everything, the whole of Egypt. And all of Joseph's life was unfair, but God was faithful through it all. Hebrews 13:5-6 says, let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have. For he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? Just quickly, I believe the story of Job and Joseph teaches us three things about navigating the truth of that life is not fair, but God is faithful. The first is this, is if you don't forget God when life is easy, he won't forget you when life is hard. If you're faithful to him in times of joy and plenty, he'll be faithful to you in times of sadness and want. If you walk with him when life is sunny, he will walk with you when life is in the shadows. There's once a young paratrooper who was learning to jump for the very first time. And he was given the following instructions. First, jump when you are told. Second, count to 10 and pull the ripcord. Third, in the unlikely event it doesn't open, pull the ripcord for the second backup chute. And fourth, when you get down, a truck will take you back to the base. Well, the plane ascended, went up into the air, proper height, and so the men start peeling out of the plane, and the young paratrooper, he jumped out of the plane when he was told, and he counted to 10 and he pulled the cord, but the chute failed to open. He proceeded to the backup plan. Well, the second chute also failed to open. He's in mid-flight, heading one way, and he said, oh boy, when I get down there, I suppose the truck won't be there to take me to the base as well. Life doesn't always go as planned. Sometimes life is downright unfair. But Joseph did the right thing because it was the right thing. Not repay evil for evil. And he knew that life was not fair and didn't expect it to be. And I want my kids, and I want your kids, and I want my grandchildren to to remember forever that life is not fair. Not so that they live in depression and cynicism, but so they will not be so disappointed and that it'll eat their lunch, but they rather live in a way that will make a difference. Amen?